Hello and welcome to Just One Thing for Parents. I'm Bettina Honan. Today I was joined by Dr. Hannah Abrahams, who's an educational psychologist, and she spoke about what parents could do when their child experiences the loss of a loved one. I mean, gosh, this is a really heavy topic potentially, but actually, Hannah made it feel like it was something that both kids and parents can absolutely get through. There was lots of advice, a lot of it actually very counterintuitive, about what to say and what not to say, and what we now know children really need in these circumstances. So I think, particularly in this respect, our ideas about what we should do and say to children has really changed, even in the last generation. So it's really worth listening to this episode. Hannah has such kind of warmth and compassion, and many good practical ideas for what to do in this situation. So please keep listening to my interview with Hannah Abrahams. So hello and welcome, Hannah. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So the question for you is, what's just one thing parents should do when their child experiences the loss of a loved one? Obviously, this is like such a difficult question, but maybe you could just start by saying a little about why you chose this question, why this feels a really important topic for you.
I think this topic it's enormous, isn't it? But it's so integral in all of our lives and it's part of our being, right? Because if there's one certainty in all of our lives, it's that things will come to an end and, we'll die.
Yeah.
And I think for children, we sort of live in an environment where often we find it really hard to feel like we can tell children the truth about things like this because we want to nurture, we want to protect them, we want to make them feel safe.
Yeah.
Um, and in a lot of my work over, gosh, the last 20 years or so, I've worked with a lot of children who've been bereaved,
Yeah.
um, and who have been bereaved in sad but understandable circumstances, and also in really traumatic, really, really traumatic circumstances as well.
Wow.
And I've learned so much from them about,
Really.
I've learned so much from them about navigating grief and understanding grief and what's helpful and what often is less helpful to kind of to avoid to not discuss with children. And I
Yeah.
suppose that's really what brought me to kind of talking to you about this today. And it feels quite pertinent as well to be talking about it at this time of year because we're recording in kind of the end of November, and it's often a time when people are really reflective about people they've lost. It's a,
Yes, so
yeah.
true. So true. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. I mean, it's kind of unthinkable, or some losses that children have to go through are really unthinkable. And I
Yeah.
think as a parent, because we're always driven to protect our children, we can sometimes want to shut down those emotions, or it's very hard for us to tolerate those emotions in our children. But it sounds like you've got, some really, really helpful ideas for parents that maybe even a little bit counterintuitive.
Possibly they are counterintuitive, yeah. And I think, it's so difficult to sort of narrow it down to, well, what's the script? How do you deal with this?
Yeah.
And and I think one of the things that I've really learned along this journey of my work is that grief moves and changes. It moves and changes for adults, and it moves and changes for children
Mm,
too.
right.
And we revisit grief, and children revisit grief at different stages of their lives, really kind of critical periods of their lives, but also developmentally.
Yeah.
And when they reach sort of different cognitive sort of levels and ages,
Yeah.
and it's not that we kind of, come to a conclusion with grief. It's that we have to work to support children to walk alongside grief. And the
Wow.
grief, yeah, it follows them, it's with them just as it is with adults. And it's an integral part of their being.
Wow.
And we have to acknowledge that. We have to be able to hold that alongside them. And I think I don't want this. I think what's really important is this isn't just a discussion about sadness.
Mm,
There's, we've spoken before, haven't we, about sort of the fluidity of, of grief and how it moves and changes. And
mm,
I was thinking the other day about sort of visceral moments of that, right? And, even if you think about when you're sitting around a dinner table and you're talking about somebody who you've lost,
mm,
and there might be moments where you have tears running down your cheeks, and then in the next moment, you'll be giggling, right?
mm,
You'll be laughing.
mm.
And that mirrors a child's grief as well.
Yeah. Wow. Such an important point. We have this idea that, somebody dies and this is what we do and then it'll be better. But that's not how it goes. Somebody dies and the grief stays with you, but I think what you're saying, it changes for all of us, but it's even more complicated for children because they're developing, aren't they? And their brain is developing and their understanding is developing. So it's going to really change for them over the years.
Absolutely. And I think that's why, when I work with a really amazing woman, her name's Shelley Gilbert, and she set up the charity called Grief Encounter.
Oh, yeah.
And, she worked really hard at dispelling this myth. And I do really believe it's a myth that we go through sort of 7 stages of grief, like Kubler-Ross wrote, right?
Mm,
And that's often what, if you're studying psychology, you'll have heard that name.
yeah.
And actually, it's not that. It's that grief is a spiral and it's an unending spiral.
Mm,
And we vacillate, we move between those different feelings of anger, frustration, denial, acceptance, love, joy, all of those things.
mm,
And if we're able to understand that, then I think that we're able to support the young people and the families that we work with, and also the families within themselves as well. And just as you say, developmentally, you know, the conversations grow, the questions grow.
yeah. Yeah. As their cognition changes, they're understanding the world in a different way, and they can come to you with a question, maybe, after 10 years, maybe, and
A
say, yeah,
hundred
but
percent.
how did they die, or what did they happen, or yeah, right,
And children are so intuitive, Bettina. I think we often think that we can hide the truth from children.
yeah,
And just as you said so beautifully at the beginning, because that's our natural response as adults. We want to protect,
yeah,
it's kind of like you want to hug in and you don't want them to feel this pain.
yeah,
But, you know, children know and they know implicitly, and they also have the most incredible imaginations and abilities to build stories.
mm,
And unless you're honest,
yeah,
those stories kind of they grow and they become more complex,
yeah,
and sometimes they can become far less helpful.
yeah.
And so that's why honesty is really key.
So, what do you mean by honesty? What kind of things would you kind of say and avoid?
So I think, and it's about avoiding euphemisms, particularly
Mm,
with younger children. Like we'll often say to younger children, well, they've passed away,
hmm,
or, they're on a star,
hmm,
or they've gone to heaven. And of course, those belief systems exist and we mustn't sort of, remove them. But actually, we have to use really honest language alongside those.
yeah,
So it sounds really harsh,
hmm,
but we do need to say things like, they've died.
hmm,
And what does they've died mean? Like,
hmm,
I've had conversations with children, like, really, what does that mean? And,
yeah,
it's we're talking about their hearts beating, talking about their bodies, talking about, but it's essentially, it's also about alongside that, it's about the process of beginning that memorialization
mm,
and, you know, bringing that person into their conscious kind of lives. They're talking about them, telling stories about them, educating them about that person. But
mm.
it's about using true and honest language with them.
So you would literally say, mummy or grandma died and their body no longer is working and we won't see them again? You would be that honest and that
I would,
harsh?
yeah, and it does. You're right. It feels so harsh, but
Yeah.
I think there are beautiful books, storybooks that have been written. I mean, they are, talking about life and death is in everything we do all day, right? Even when you turn on the TV at night and, or, children watch cartoons, it's implicit in the conversations.
Hmm.
So, whilst we use that honest language, we can also explore it through storytelling and through also kind of you can develop an understanding of where a child or a young person is through something called watchful waiting. So, particularly when somebody's experienced a traumatic loss,
Yeah.
we have this kind of like we want to jump in
Yeah.
and fix it. And but actually, what we need to do and what I've done in my work is stand back and observe and
Mm.
make sense of,
Mm.
and from there sort of understand where this young person's at and what they might need and what's not going to be helpful right now. And yeah,
So one of the do's is to actually kind of watch and attune to where that child is, regardless of their age, regardless of where you think they should be. It's about trying to read from them. What are you ready for? And what do you need me to say and not say in this moment?
absolutely. And also to be reflective with them and be curious with them.
Yeah.
So take a reflective stance. And, often, children will communicate in all sorts of ways, which might not necessarily be the way in which you think they're communicating. So that
Mm.
anger and that frustration, it can be met with curiosity. Like, I wonder if you're feeling really upset this evening because your uncle's not coming to sit at the Thanksgiving table.
Yeah. 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 So looking underneath the behavior, they're not necessarily going to sit there and say, I'm feeling really sad, I'm missing uncle today.
Yeah.
But when you see something unusual or different, being curious about that.
Being
Yeah.
curious with them and reflecting that language of emotion back, and that in itself helps, them develop their emotional literacy, which we talk so much about.
Yeah.
And I think when somebody's lost somebody really dear to them, often it's really hard to find the words, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
really, really hard, particularly if you're a child or if you're a teen, because
Yeah.
a little one's brain mirrors that of an adolescent. We know, we understand that.
Mm.
So that ability to sort of use that language of emotion is squashed, and we
Yeah.
need to open it up and let it bloom.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
really allowing them to share their emotions and being able to sit with their emotions, however hard it is. That's
Yeah.
incredibly hard as a parent to
It's
do
so
that.
it's so hard as a parent to do that. And it can be so painful. And I think another really important thing is to know that it is all right to show your feelings.
Yeah. Hmm.
It's actually so important.
Yeah.
And, look, if you feel like you are out of control with those, then fine. Then understandably, you need to sort of create a protective space between you and that and your child. But it is more than okay to show your sadness. It's more than
Yeah.
okay to show your anger. Like, how can they possibly have left me now when I needed them? Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. You mentioned memorializing. Maybe just say a little bit more about that. What does that
Yeah.
mean
I
and
mean,
look
I
like?
think, do you know what? Yesterday I was thinking about, I don't know whether you've heard, there was a really special woman. Her name was Deborah James, and she died of bowel cancer. It must be about 4 or 5 years ago. And she was incredibly vocal about kind of anticipatory grief, about like she had two children and she knew that she was going to die.
Mm.
And one of the things that she did, and I'm not saying that this is possible for everybody, of course it's not, but she started to create the process of memorialization without naming it. She would kind of write letters to her children or, create photo books. And interestingly, her daughter was talking about this yesterday, just yesterday, about the fact that, she knows that obviously she's lost her mother,
Mm.
but the process of these discussions, the photo books, these kind of tangible objects means that these memories are kind of kept alive.
Yeah.
And that was that was Deborah's anticipatory kind of like she knew what was going to happen. But for the children that I've worked with that have either experienced sudden grief and traumatic grief, or that have experienced just grief like we all experience grief, it's so important to kind of like create rituals and things that memorialize that person. So it might not just be that, you visit their grave on, their birthdays. It might be that you plant a specific plant that they loved in the garden.
Hmm.
It might be that you have a favorite book that you hold on to and you read and you talk about the fact that this person used to read you this book with with a funny voice and you remember that.
Mm.
Um, it might be that you create a little kind of jar with little very specific memories in. I mean, one thing that, parents can do with their children is they can create kind of like sand jars as well. And
Lovely.
pouring different colored sand in and how does it, how does it lay and what do those different sort of like textures and things, what do they mean to them? What do they remind them of?
Yeah.
Essentially, memorialization is about developing these kind of rituals, these discussions around the memories of that person.
Even when the person is gone, I think in probably our parents' generation, there was an idea that it's better not to speak about the person.
Yeah.
I know somebody who lost their mother, and he's now an adult, and he says, nobody talked about her. I didn't know her. I didn't really know her friends. I didn't get a sense of the kind of person that she was. But I think what you're saying is the advice now is not to do that, almost do the opposite of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it means that those stories and those feelings
Mm,
are kept alive. And of course, they're not going to be as powerful, kind of like physiologically, as they are when you first lose somebody.
mm.
But it's so important. And also, when you're talking about that person, it's part of their identity.
Yeah, yeah, so
Like,
true.
who are they? Where did they come from? What makes them tick like they do, and understanding sort of, what their mother brought them. And I think the other really important point that I want to make is because we're talking about death, right?
Yeah.
But actually, loss exists in many forms for children.
Mm, true.
And that might mean the hospitalization of a parent or, them having to, they might be in the army and they go away for a significant period of time and they've lost a really kind of important part, right? So both of those people are grieving that.
Yeah,
But that is a form of loss. And it is important to talk about those things and recognize them. And I think we're both sort of agreeing that being honest and talking is it's critical and memorialization is a really really empowering part of that.
yeah. Can I just ask a very specific question about funerals? Is it
Hmm.
recommended that children go to funerals? Is there a developmental point at which you would or wouldn't advise that?
Gosh, what's the question? I think it's so individual,
Yeah. Hmm.
and I don't think that anybody should walk away thinking there is a right or a wrong answer.
Hmm.
And you know for a very young child it can be deeply confusing.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I'm not sure that I would advocate for that necessarily, but for an older child who can understand that they've lost a grandparent or they've lost a parent, and also it's about listening and hearing their voice as well.
Yeah.
So if you are able to sit with your child and be honest with them about, what this is going to look like, what it might feel like,
Hmm.
understanding the structure of the day.
Mm. Yeah.
And also knowing that it's all right to change your mind. Like you can
Mm.
get as far there as being able to walk into the church or, the religious setting, and you might change your mind, and that's fine.
Yeah.
So it's about providing permission,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. I think you were involved, I don't know if you're happy to talk about it, but a little bit in the Grenfell
Yeah,
with the Grenfell families, weren't you?
I was. It was a real privilege. and an honor, and it was deeply humbling. And I learned so much. I worked with the families who'd survived um, the fire in the tower, and we worked directly with them. And I think one of the hugest things I learned was it's not about going in and giving advice. It's about being alongside. It's
Mm.
about creating safe spaces.
Yeah.
It's also about the importance of recognizing and understanding cultures and different cultures and how they interact and communicate about life and death.
Wow.
Because there's often like a total kind of symbiosis, and different cultures absolutely work in the same way, and other parts culturally that absolutely don't. But one of the biggest things that we did is that we were given kind of the task of organizing the memorial in the first year after Grenfell Tower burnt with the families, the direct families, um and none of it was. I know that it would have, the big memorials would have been kind of in the press. This was incredibly private,
Mm.
and nobody knew about it,
Mm.
and the children led it.
Oh, wow.
So we followed the children's lead. And I think, I mean, one of the things that I think will stay with me always is they wanted to stand at the base of the tower, and they wanted to say prayers and poems, and they also wanted to release doves,
Oh, wow.
which was really beautiful. They were very somber and very quiet. And bearing in mind, these are young children as well. There was a complete array of ages. Um, and we then organised a tea. And one of the things that was so significant was that the children went to have the tea. And the
Mm.
tea was in the school right next door to Grenfell, where Grenfell burned. And suddenly I could hear these squeals of delight, and they were playing hide and seek
Oh,
inside the building. But I think the power in that was that we moved from this very somber, really reflective grief that they were autonomous over, they
mhm.
had created, and there were rituals and things that they did. And then they were allowed to let go, and they were children, right? And I think that's really important. It's the fluidity
Yeah.
of these feelings that, they come and they go, and they come and they go, and we walk alongside them, and
Yeah.
we learn to integrate them into our lives.
Wow. Wow. What a powerful image. I imagine you've spoken to people who have lost significant others when they were children.
Yes.
Any key messages from them?
I actually spoke to somebody the other day who I've been working with, and um, the key message from this young person was, don't sugarcoat it.
Wow. Hmm.
Tell me the truth,
Hmm.
and let me find my way with you.
Gosh, that's so helpful. So many incredibly helpful things today. Is there anything you feel like you haven't said? And also, if you could just end on just one thing, what would that one thing be?
Oh gosh. I think just remembering that grief isn't linear, that you don't get to this sort of end destination,
Mm.
that it, just as we said earlier, it's a spiral. Um, that we need to validate and name everybody's emotions, and that those emotions will change and move, and some of them will feel okay, and some of them won't, in terms of whether you're a parent or not listening to them. Um, I just think the biggest message after all that I've learned and I continue to learn is just maintain honesty. Be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of it.
Wow. Oh, Hannah, thank you so much.
Oh, thank
Really
you.
tricky question that I think you've addressed with such care and thoughtfulness. So thanks so much for coming on today.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.